Peppa Pig might look like a simple children's cartoon, but it's full of surprises. Over the years, the show has quietly introduced moments that completely changed how fans see its characters and world. Some twists were emotional, some were shocking, and a few were so unexpected that they made people question the reality of Peppa's universe itself. Here are the biggest plot twists you need to know about Peppa Pig. 10. George's hearing reveal: the truth behind Dinosaur. Since the very beginning of the series, George Pig has had one of the most recognizable traits in the entire show. He says one word: dinosaur. No matter what question he's asked, no matter what situation he's in, George often responds with the same answer. For years, everyone assumed it was simply because he loved dinosaurs so much. It became a running joke. George the toddler who only talks about his favorite toy. But then something changed. A later storyline involving a medical checkup revealed a deeper explanation behind George's limited speech and responses. Instead of just being personality, the show suggested that George has difficulty hearing certain sounds, meaning he may not always understand what people are saying to him. That changes everything. Suddenly, all those moments where George answered dinosaur to completely unrelated questions take on a different meaning. He wasn't ignoring people. He might not have heard them properly in the first place. The idea of moderate hearing difficulty also explains why his vocabulary developed more slowly than Peppa's. Hearing plays a huge role in how children learn language, so even small differences can affect speech patterns. And the emotional impact of this twist is surprisingly strong. Instead of being the funny little brother who only talks about toys, George becomes a child overcoming a challenge. It recontextualizes years of episodes in a completely new way. 9. Mummy Pig's pregnancy: the biggest change in 20 years. For more than 2 decades, the Pig family stayed exactly the same. Peppa, George, Mummy Pig, Daddy Pig. That was the core structure of the show, and most fans assumed it would never change. Peppa Pig was known for its consistency. Episodes reset back to normal at the end. Characters rarely aged. Life stayed predictable. Then came one of the biggest shocks in the show's history. Mummy Pig was pregnant. When the announcement happened, it wasn't just surprising for fans, it became international news. Articles were written about it. Social media exploded with reactions. After more than 20 years of the same family dynamic, Peppa was about to become a big sister again. And the changes didn't stop there. The storyline introduced a new baby into the family, along with other updates to their life. A new house, a new car, even changes to the opening sequence of the show itself. For a series famous for staying the same, this was huge. It proved something important. The Peppa Pig world can evolve. Characters can grow, families can change, life can move forward, and for many longtime viewers, that realization alone felt like a plot twist. 8. The opening episode. Origin: is Peppa Pig a show inside its own world? There's one episode that completely changed how some fans interpret the entire Peppa Pig universe. It involves television. In this storyline, Peppa and her family visit a recording studio connected to a popular show. During the visit, Peppa ends up being filmed, and she starts saying lines that sound extremely familiar to viewers. They're the same phrases used in the Peppa Pig opening sequence. Then something even more surprising happens. Other characters are shown watching Peppa on television. That creates a strange possibility. What if Peppa Pig is actually a TV show, inside its own universe? If that idea sounds confusing, think about it this way. The Peppa we watch could be a character who also exists as a celebrity in her world. The intro sequence might represent a show being filmed about her life, rather than just an introduction for viewers. This kind of show within a show concept appears in other series, but seeing it hinted at in Peppa Pig was unexpected. It also creates a timeline mystery. If Peppa's TV appearance explains the intro, does that mean the recording episode technically happens before all the others? Could it be the first chronological event in her story? The theory isn't officially confirmed, but the evidence is strong enough to make fans question what's really happening. And if Peppa Pig already bends reality like that, the next twist becomes even more surprising. 7. Madame Gazelle: the teacher who might be a vampire. Madame Gazelle is one of the most trusted characters in Peppa Pig. She's kind, calm, patient, the perfect teacher, which is exactly why one detail about her feels so unsettling once you notice it. In one episode, Madame Gazelle is standing in front of a mirror, and her reflection doesn't appear. At first glance, you might assume it's just an animation mistake. After all, Peppa Pig has a very simple art style. Maybe the animators just forgot to include the reflection. But then the narrator comments on it. That's the important part. The show acknowledges that something is missing. And suddenly, what seemed like a small visual detail becomes something much bigger. Because in folklore, creatures without reflections are usually vampires. Once fans noticed this, they started connecting other clues. Madame Gazelle was already a teacher when Peppa's parents were children, and she looks exactly the same today. No aging, no changes. Decades have passed, yet she remains identical. That suggests something impossible. Either time works very differently for her. Or she's not entirely normal. Of course, Peppa Pig never directly confirms that she's a vampire, but the combination of clues, the mirror, the lack of aging, and the narrator acknowledging the detail makes the theory feel intentional. It's one of the most famous hidden mysteries in the entire series, and it raises a strange question. If Madame Gazelle really is supernatural, what else in Peppa's world might be? 6. Miss Rabbit. One character or hundreds? Miss Rabbit might be the hardest working character in television history. She runs the supermarket, she drives the bus, she works at the amusement park. She operates the helicopter, she sells tickets, she manages events, the list never ends. At first, this seems like a simple joke. One character appearing in many jobs for comedic effect. But over time, it starts to feel impossible. There aren't enough hours in the day for one person to do everything Miss Rabbit does. Then, things get even stranger. When Peppa and her family travel to other countries, versions of Miss Rabbit appear there too. Characters with the same voice, same personality, and same ability to handle multiple jobs, but living in completely different locations. That introduces a bizarre possibility. Are there multiple Miss Rabbits? Some fans believe she comes from a very large family. Others joke that she might be cloned. And a few theories suggest that Miss Rabbit represents a kind of cartoon logic, a character who exists wherever she's needed, regardless of realism. But the international versions push the mystery further, because if she exists everywhere, she's not just a hardworking rabbit, she's practically a universal constant, and that idea makes her one of the most unusual characters in Peppa Pig. 5. Super Potato. Fake hero or real superpowers? Most characters in Peppa Pig follow simple, understandable rules. They're animals living normal lives. Then there's Mr. Potato. Unlike everyone else, he's a vegetable, already breaking the logic of the world. But things get even more confusing with the introduction of Super Potato, a superhero version of him. At first, it seems obvious what's happening. Super Potato is probably just Mr. Potato in costume. The show even plays into this idea. Mr. Potato often disappears right before Super Potato appears, following the classic superhero secret identity trope. It feels like a fun joke for children, a character pretending to have powers for entertainment. But then comes the twist. At the end of one episode, Mr. Potato gets trapped inside a vehicle. Suddenly, Super Potato appears, flying, and the two characters are seen at the same time. That moment changes everything, because it proves Super Potato isn't just a costume. He actually has powers. The show never fully explains how this works. Is he a separate character? A magical version of Mr. Potato? A superhero that somehow exists alongside his normal identity? Whatever the answer is, the reveal breaks one of the main assumptions about the Peppa universe, that everything follows everyday logic. Super Potato introduces the idea that real superpowers might exist, and once that door opens, the world becomes much stranger. 4. Daddy Pig, the moment he realized the script. Daddy Pig is usually portrayed as cheerful, confident, and occasionally clumsy. One of the longest-running jokes in Peppa Pig is that he often gets stuck. Stuck indoors, stuck in tunnels, stuck in tight spaces. It happens so often that it becomes predictable. But in one episode, something unusual happens. Before entering a situation where people are getting trapped, Daddy Pig suddenly pauses and says that this kind of thing usually happens to him. Then he predicts, almost with certainty, that he's going to get stuck too. And for a brief moment, he looks toward the viewer. It's subtle, but noticeable. It feels less like a character speaking inside a story, and more like someone acknowledging what's about to happen because they know the pattern of the show. Then, despite predicting the outcome, he does it anyway. And of course, he gets stuck. That moment creates a strange interpretation. Did Daddy Pig realize he's part of a scripted world? It's probably meant as humor, but the implication is fascinating. He recognizes the recurring joke that defines his character. He anticipates the event before it happens, and yet he still follows through, almost like he has no choice. That idea, a character aware of their role but unable to change it, is surprisingly deep for a children's cartoon. It turns a simple gag into something that feels almost philosophical. 3. Teddy, the gender that keeps changing. Peppa's teddy bear has always been one of her most important toys. She plays with it constantly, talks to it, and treats it like a friend. For most of the series, viewers assume Teddy is male, mainly because of how characters sometimes refer to it. But then comes a small moment that changes everything. In one episode, Peppa starts treating Teddy as a girl, and Daddy Pig notices. He even says he didn't know Teddy was a girl. That line confirms something important. Teddy's gender isn't fixed. Across different episodes, Teddy has been referred to as both male and female, sometimes even after the reveal. That inconsistency might seem like a mistake, but there's actually a deeper explanation. Toys don't have identities on their own. Their identity comes from the child imagining them. So Teddy becomes whatever Peppa believes in that moment. Sometimes a boy, sometimes a girl, sometimes just a toy, sometimes a character in her games. This twist isn't shocking in a dramatic way, but it quietly shows how children perceive the world. Reality becomes flexible through imagination, and once you realize that, Teddy stops being just a stuffed animal. It becomes a reflection of Peppa's creativity. 2. Susie Sheep's imaginary friend, the character that became real. Imaginary friends are normal in children's stories, and Susie Sheep once had one. She told Peppa about a friend named Leo Lion, describing him in detail, talking about things they did together, and treating him like he was completely real. But of course, he didn't exist. At least, that's what everyone assumed. Then, in a later episode, Peppa meets a new child. His name is Lorenzo Lion. And here's where things get strange. The description Susie gave of her imaginary friend matches Lorenzo almost perfectly. Same species, same personality traits, same general characteristics. That creates a bizarre possibility. Was Leo Lion actually inspired by Lorenzo? Maybe Susie had seen him before without realizing it, and her imagination filled in the rest. Or maybe she created an imaginary friend first, and later met someone who happened to match that idea. Some fans even speculate something more mysterious, that imagination somehow became reality. Of course, the show never confirms which explanation is true, but the connection is strong enough to turn a simple imaginary friend into one of the most interesting plot twists in Peppa Pig. 1. Carol Cow, the character that disappeared from her own family. Carol Cow might be one of the most confusing mysteries in the entire Peppa Pig universe. Unlike major characters, she never had a big storyline. She mostly appeared in the background, small scenes where she stood next to Mrs. Cow, which led fans to assume she was her daughter. Over time, that assumption became widely accepted. Viewers kept spotting her in different episodes, always near Mrs. Cow, always behaving like part of the family. Eventually, the idea that Carol was Mrs. Cow's daughter became unofficial canon, something fans believed even without direct confirmation from the show. Then came the moment that changed everything. Mrs. Cow got married to Mr. Bull. It was a major event with many characters attending the ceremony. Friends, neighbors, and familiar faces from Peppa Town were all present to celebrate. But one character was missing. Carol, the supposed daughter of the bride, wasn't there. That created a huge continuity problem. If Carol really is Mrs. Cow's child, why wouldn't she attend her mother's wedding? Why isn't she shown interacting with Mr. Bull afterward? Why does she almost disappear from the series entirely? There are several possible explanations. Maybe the writers simply forgot about her. Maybe she was always meant to be a background character, not a real family member. Or maybe Peppa Pig operates with a loose continuity where background details don't always carry over. But for fans paying attention, the mystery remains unsolved. Carol Cow feels like a character who almost exists, but not completely. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes her the biggest plot twist on this list. When you look at all these moments together, something interesting becomes clear. Peppa Pig isn't as static as it seems. Characters change. Details evolve. Reality bends occasionally. And sometimes the show introduces ideas that feel much deeper than expected for a preschool cartoon. Some twists come from storytelling decisions, like Mummy Pig's pregnancy changing the family forever. Others come from visual details, like Madame Gazelle's missing reflection. And some exist because children's imagination shapes reality inside the show, like Teddy's identity or imaginary friends becoming real connections. These elements create a world that feels alive. Even when the show resets at the end of each episode, there are small clues that Peppa's universe is constantly growing and shifting in the background. If you enjoyed these Peppa Pig plot twists and want to discover more hidden details, theories, and secrets from the show, make sure to check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.